Hey guys, it's Smurfs. Welcome back to Harpies in the Trees, where I review horror books with a supernatural focus. Except today it's going to be a series. It's going to be the Cabinet of Curiosities by Guillermo del Toro. There was a suggestion made by a commenter on one of my videos or community posts that I should do a review of this series, and I thought about it. I thought it would be really fun because I really enjoyed the series. So that's what we're going to do in today's video. So if you haven't seen Cabinet of Curiosities, I won't be giving you any spoilers, so you'll be able to watch this review without knowing all of the stuff that you should discover on your own as you're watching the episodes. I'm going to be sharing a little bit of background for some of the episodes, if there is any that I thought was kind of interesting, what the episode is basically about, and if I liked it or not. So there are a few things I want to discuss first, which is like the overall feeling of the show. It was very cohesive. It was very cool. I love this intro that Del Toro would do where he would present every single episode to you. You know, it was really set up in that way where I think this is where the inspiration for the theater of the great puppet. This was something that was very popular in the late 1800s and up until the 1960s in France, where there would be these performances of dark, weird, horrific stories, like anything in the macabre and the horror, basically. And it really has that feeling. It feels like a stage. You have this black background, you have this really cool set piece, which is probably practical and CGI, and then you have your host coming out, talking to you a little bit about the episode. So it had this very intense and thoughtful feeling to it. Like, I just felt like I was going to be in for something special. There are a lot of things throughout each episode that are very consistent, like the music is very good for all of the episodes. The set design is careful and full of detail. It was really just exciting to see all of the detail that they put into these sets because it was really movie quality. The costumes are great. All of the episodes, I believe, take place maybe at the latest, 80s, 90s. So we're getting into stories in the 1800s and the early 1900s. So they're definitely in these other eras, which is really fun. The special effects, CGI and practical, were really good. The creature designs I thought were pretty stellar. I really enjoyed all of them for the most part. They all had kind of just a sense of feeling kind of unique. Not in the sense that there's never been anything like it, but it kind of felt like its own thing. There aren't any cheap scares, and there's not a lot of familiar ground in the sense that I feel like a lot of the stories, they kind of go somewhere where you don't expect, but there's always a surprise or something. I feel a lot of the times in horror especially, we just get a lot of the same thing. So obviously nice to get out of that box for a moment. There are also a lot of rats. And this series seems to be very, very much inspired by Lovecraftian horror. So there are these themes there. So with all of that out of the way, let's talk about the episodes. I don't want to make this too excruciatingly long, so I'm going to try and, make it as compact as possible. Before we get into the review, please be sure to like and comment and subscribe. So I'm going to start with the episodes I liked the most and going down to the ones I liked the least. The first one we're going to talk about is Lot 36. This story was actually written by Del Toro, but the teleplay version was written by Regina Corrado, who worked on Deadwood. This is a occult, supernatural horror story about this guy named Nick. Nick is a very bitter xenophobe, and he makes his living by buying abandoned storage units to try and resell whatever's inside. And with his latest purchase, he stumbles across something that looks really special. And he gets someone to take a look at it. It's definitely worth something. And this German collector becomes very, very interested. And he wants to know if he has more of these items. So both of them go to the storage space and they start looking around to see if they can find more. But of course, they find a little more than they were looking for. I really liked this episode. I thought it was really good. We all know someone like Nick, like someone who's just constantly blaming other people for all of their problems. He thinks like the whole world is against him. And he's always so angry that it just seems like he can never really make a good decision because he's just so blurred by that anger. So it's really fun because you are pretty, I think, satisfied with how it ends up in the end. And so it's kind of cathartic. And it's sort of that lesson of like, being kind doesn't really cost you anything, but can be the difference between life and death. So this is occult supernatural, so those elements are definitely there, and I really loved, what was in the storage unit. I really liked it. So I gave this one 5 out of 5. The Autopsy. Now this one is based off of a short story written by Michael Shea, and it is called The Autopsy, written in 1987. Shea was really interested in the Cthulhu mythos and also really into demons, which is pretty cool. In The Autopsy, Dr. Carl Winters has been contacted by an old friend of his who happens to be a sheriff, and he wants him to come by the morgue and do an autopsy on these corpses that came in from a mining accident. Winters agrees. He goes to the morgue and he starts performing the task, but one of these bodies reanimates and tells him something unbelievable. So right off the bat, I love F. Murray Abraham. I just love him, and anytime he's in anything, I just find him completely mesmerizing to watch. And he was amazing as this character. He was vulnerable, he was feisty, he just kind of had this confidence also about him that was, I don't know, strangely comforting, like watching the episode, because it's a lot of weird things that are happening. Like you don't know exactly what's going on. So a little bit of that comfort in this character felt good. This kind of reminded me of The Autopsy of Jane Doe, but cosmic horror. That's kind of how it feels, So the tension is there, the uncertainty is there, like what is going on. I also really like the friendship between Winters and the sheriff. I thought it was very sweet, and you just felt like you could see them being old buddies. It was also very gruesome because there's a lot of body horror going on. So be prepared for that. So I gave this one 5 out of 5. Loved it. The Graveyard. Now, The Graveyard was a short story that was written by Henry Kuttner. It was first published in the Weird Tales magazine in 1936. This is a Lovecraftian horror, and it also has like a creature feature to it. So this is about Mason. This one takes place, I think, in the 1850s, 1870s, 90s, around there. So there's this grubby, grave robber. His name is Mason, and he, if it's shiny and it's in bone dirt, he's gonna take it. It's his. He comes across a fresh grave, and he knows that this grave is gonna have, some stuff in it, some things he could sell. So he's very excited. He digs down into the grave. He opens it up. He sees a rat like pulling the body down into a hole that I guess all of these rats had kind of like made together. And he's repulsed, but he's not going to be like outwitted by some dumbass rats. So he jumps into the hole to chase after them. This one is funny and gruesome. It's a little bit campy. It's a lot of fun to watch. I love rats, so I'm always rooting for the rats. So, I enjoyed everything that was happening with Mason and the rats. And this story is like, it's the classic theme of like greed. This greedy old geezer getting more than he bargained for, but that is like the fun of the episode. Plus, there's like other things going on too, like within these holes and tunnels. There's other things going on there. So it's sort of a culmination of horrible things. It definitely had that kind of like a Tales from the Crypt vibe to it a little bit because it had that camp, and it was fun. Ultimate fun. 5 out of 5. Pickmans Model. This is also based off of a Lovecraft story called Pickmans Model, and this is about Will. And I think this takes place in like the early 1900s, maybe 1920s, around there. He is a art student, and he befriends this dude, this guy, Upton Pickman, who makes horrific, nightmarish paintings. And these paintings, Will just cannot get out of his mind. Like, he's just sort of mesmerized by them. He just can't let it go. Years later, after they're out of school or whatever, Pickman has actually become a very renowned painter. And he stops in to see Will, like, at his home, which kind of freaks Will out a little bit, but he begs Will. He's like, please come to my home and see my new work. I really want to share it with you. Of course, Will is like torn between, it feels scary, but I'm gonna do it. So he does, and he learns a very, very terrible truth about Pickman. Fantastic. So much about this I loved. This was I think my most favorite out of the group because it just sort of was everything that I kind of like, So Pickman. I love horror stories about art. Artists who create cursed art or something, like in Apartment 16 by Adam Neville, that type, Francis Bacon. There's just something about that concept that just really, really speaks to me. So I was already really intrigued. Crispin Glover is another favorite actor of mine. He's such a weirdo. He's so unique and unusual and different. I really, really adore him in films. And he gives a very cool performance. He has this Bostonian accent, and he kind of does a lot of this side-eye stuff, right? He doesn't look Will in the eyes that much. And there's something very unsettling about it. So his performance is kind of subdued, but it kind of just made it disturbing because you're this guy is either just a loner or he's gonna chop me up and put me in the basement. And one thing that I didn't mention in an overall aspect is that there's a lot of accent work that goes into these episodes, which was very cool to me. I like that. I think it adds a very special detail to the storytelling. And when we get to see Pickman's work, whoever was in charge of procuring the artwork for this episode did a great job because they found artists who can really express that disturbing, freaky quality, and it really just made it feel more real. There's been so many times when I've watched movies where it's supposed to be a scary painting or drawing and you're just like, okay, I guess. There's a part where we go into Pickman's house. I mean, it's basically a mansion. It's huge. It's all dark wood on the inside. It's dark green wallpaper. It's gorgeous. Loved being in there. And all over the place are just pictures and paintings and drawings and sketchings of his work. And you see it in the background and it's all top notch. The ending of the story showed something that I didn't think it was going to show, and I was very glad that it did because it just made it disturbing. You'll just have to watch it. It's usually when it comes to that type of theme, they sort of imply it, so you don't really see that often. It wasn't extremely explicit, but it was enough. It was enough where you're ooh. For some people, I think the pacing might be a little slow, but I enjoyed it. This gave me an opportunity to really just oogle the sets, and kind of just live in this space for a minute. I liked the breathing room. I appreciated it. I gave it 5 out of 5. So that is the end of the 5 out of 5s. Now we're going to go into I think it's the only 4 that I have. It's The Murmuring. The Murmuring is directed by Jennifer Kent, who did The Babadook. And the same actress who plays the mother in Babadook is also the main character in this episode. Andrew Lincoln is also in it from Walking Dead. I think he did a phenomenal job. So this takes place, I think, in the 1940s, I believe. And this is about Nancy and Edgar, who are these bird enthusiasts. They document flock patterns, and groups of birds are flying through the sky. And this is something they refer to as murmurations. They have a whole entire club. So like they are always going out trying to document, more and more stuff so they can show it to their patrons, basically. So they end up going on this trip to this really pretty area. And they rent this house. It's a Victorian looking home. It's huge, but it's also kind of a tomb. Like all of the belongings of the past residents still lived in the house, But anyway, it was cheap and they get to be in a location where all of these birds are. Win-win. There is obviously some tension between the couple, which comes to become worse when Nancy begins to see the ghost of a small boy in their bedroom. This was very beautifully shot, and it's a very delicate story. It's very haunting and gothic, and it's about grief and healing. The energy between the two actors was very good. Like, they really felt like this couple who were having, problems, but shared a hobby and a passion, for birds and stuff. And whatever was going on in their life, like, it just really felt like they had lived this life together. The one thing I didn't like was how annoying Nancy was. And I think this might be just a personal preference because I think the character was really well written. And I think that the actress really portrayed her perfectly. It was just, for me, that type of person is so annoying because there is something going on with this character that is making her frazzled and high-strung and tight-lipped and just emotionally brittle. That like dealing with her is just, it's difficult. It's walking on eggshells. So I gave this a 4 out of 5. The next one is Dreams of the Witch House. Now, this one is also a Lovecraft story, and it does star a few very familiar faces like Rupert Grint, who is from Harry Potter, obviously, and an actor from Rings of Power, Ismael Enrique Cruz Cordova. This is a supernatural horror story, and it's about a guy named Walter, who's played by Grint. Walter had lost his sister at a very young age and has become very obsessed with contacting her. He is so obsessed that he has become like a member of like a paranormal society, and he's been trying to find ways of contacting her, whether that's through psychics, mediums, new types of technology, whatever. And he just finds like he cannot break through. He cannot reach her. So one day he is at a bar. He's kind of like just, drinking down his sorrows. He overhears a conversation between these two indigenous patrons at the bar. And one of them is sort of sharing an experience, some kind of supernatural experience. And so Walter is like, how can I have that experience? So he gets this drug that allows him to seemingly transcend into some other place. And then he decides, I think where I should do this is at the old witch's house, and maybe I'll have better luck there. So he heads over there in hopes of being able to contact his sister. So this was a very fun one. I think like what I liked the best was like the design of the witch and also the rat. I won't tell you anything about the rat. Just know that it's not your usual rat, and you will know it when you see it. It was a very bizarre, very cool. I really like that. And the witch I thought was stunning. I was just like, man, if I saw you in the night like that, you're coming home with me. But anyway, the design was really, really cool. I just loved that. But the story itself, I don't know. It wasn't really compelling, the story between him and his sister. Like, I really didn't care. I didn't care about his sister. I didn't care about why he wanted her back. I didn't care about where they go and come or whatever. Didn't care at all. The part that was really interesting was parts that they didn't really get into too much, which was the paranormal society and his friendship with Cordova's character. Because I thought it was a very sweet friendship, and it would have just been cool to like explore that a little more. So it was okay. It wasn't bad. So I gave it 3.5 out of 5. The viewing. I learned an interesting little tidbit about this director. So this was directed by the same director who did Black Rainbow and Mandy, if you've seen those. So when you watch the viewing, or if you've already watched it, you're going to be like, makes sense. That totally tracks. It's the mood and the atmosphere and the music and the vibe and everything. You know, you just, it's very, very obvious. But one thing that I learned about him that I thought was kind of unusual was that his dad was also a film director, and he directed Tombstone, like the Tombstone. One of the greatest Western movies ever made, in my opinion, Tombstone. Eric Andre is in this episode. I love Eric Andre. Like, anything he does, like, I watch it. I love it. He's so funny. And Peter Weller. Peter Weller was RoboCop. He just has a cool vibe. I like watching him. I could just listen to him talk all day. And this is wait for it, it's a cosmic horror episode. So this is about a wealthy, eccentric recluse who invites a psychic, a scientist, a musician, and an author to party at his brutalist, futuristic, minimal estate, even though he will tell you that is not what it is, but it's kind of what it is. And none of them know why they have been brought there. You know, they've been brought in a van and they have no idea what's going on. But they get there and they proceed to do a bunch of drugs with their host until the time comes when they get to find out why they have been summoned. So the atmosphere, the music, the set design, so cool. Like, loved it. This one takes place in the 70s. Loved it so much, especially the music. It was so cool. But it drags, man. It dragged. It takes a really long time to get to this place where, you know, something happens. As the audience, I mean, I'm just gonna assume, you know, we're not doing blow and drinking like 300-year-old brandy to entertain us until like the moment comes. Like we're just watching and waiting, you know what I mean? So this one really dragged. But if you can wait till the end, the ending is pretty cool. I have to say, it's pretty cool. Liked it a lot. The theme of the viewing, I think, was arrogance. Yeah, definitely arrogance. So yeah, it's a weird one, but it's kind of cool. I just went 3 out of 5. Now the next one is The Outside. This is my least favorite. Like, just really did not get into this at all. This is directed by the same director who did A Girl Walks at Home at Night. And this story is based off of a webcomic called Some Other Animals Meet by Emily Carroll. And this stars Katie Michucci, who's from Garfunkel and Oates. It's like a comedic duo who make music about stuff. I don't know. It's not my kind of thing. So I just know like they make music. I believe it's satirical. I'm not sure. Kind of comedic. Kate Michucci is a comedian. And the genre is weird. I don't know what it is. So this is a story about awkward and plain Stacy, who invests in some expensive cream that her gorgeous but judgmental female coworkers seem to literally have an orgasm about every time it comes up. It's like somehow they start talking about the cream and it's like,
are you guys all gonna just like have an orgy right now? I don't know.
But they seem to be really into this cream, like really into it. And the thing is like this cream is supposed to make you gorgeous and sultry and like, I don't know, I guess everyone wants you. But this lotion actually ends up giving her this horrible rash, disgusting rash. But she keeps the faith. She's like, it's gonna happen, I'm gonna be beautiful, and she keeps using it. Her husband is trying to convince her that, you know, she doesn't need the cream, that she doesn't need to impress these snobby bitches at work. But Stacy refuses to stop and is going to be beautiful. So I just hated this story. I don't know. Like, I think like the concept and the theme was just boring and uninteresting. There is a thing in the story. Like, it's a thing. And it's kind of creepy and unusual, but it doesn't really go anywhere. And there's a lot of things in this episode where I just had a lot of questions. I didn't really understand, like, it just didn't make sense. I was talking to my friend about this specific episode because I was like, yeah, I just really didn't like this one. And he said he didn't like it either. Clifton, shout out to you. And he was like, Have you ever heard of Chekhov's gun? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, it's a principle of like when you, as a writer, you make sure that elements that you put into the story have meaning. You know, they're going to propel the story. And all of the irrelevant elements you take out. And I just feel like that thing that we're talking about was totally irrelevant. I'm like, yeah, a lot of it was irrelevant. A lot of it didn't make any sense and it didn't go anywhere. It's like you kind of knew everything already. It played out the way you thought it was going to play out. There was a few things to be like, oh, that's weird, but then kind of like they don't go anywhere. The theme of The Outside is basically like validation. You know, like I want to be validated. I want to be beautiful. I want to be like the others. Which, you know, is a good theme because I think it's something that you can really just jump off of and make something chilling, disturbing, horrible. I don't even understand why it was called The Outside. I mean, I guess it's called The Outside because of the way she looks. So I gave it 2 out of 5. So obviously I think that the series is like a 4 out of 5. I think mostly everything is really, really good, which is something that I can rarely say for a lot of other things. So I hope that you guys liked this video and you enjoyed this little review of the series. I know I didn't get into too much detail, but I hope that encourages you to go and watch it if you haven't watched it already. Be sure to like and comment down below. Let me know what is your favorite episode or what was your least favorite episode in this specific series. I'd like to know. I'm pretty curious, actually. Other than that, please take care of yourselves, look out for each other, and I will talk to you next time.